You wake up to another day where nothing seems to go right. The job you wanted slips through your fingers. The project you poured your heart into falls apart, and the world feels like it's conspiring against you. But what if I told you that these moments, the ones that feel like crushing defeats, are actually the raw materials for your greatest victories? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who ruled Rome during some of its most turbulent years, put it best: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about that for a second. The very obstacles that seem to block your path, they're not just hurdles to overcome, they're the exact training ground you need to become unstoppable. That's the heart of Stoicism, a philosophy forged not in comfort, but in the fires of adversity. And today, we're diving deep into how you can use its timeless principles to turn every failure into fuel, every setback into a setup for something greater. Here's the paradox most people miss. True dominance isn't about controlling the world around you. It's about mastering your reactions to it. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, the radical idea that while we can't always choose what happens to us, we always choose how we respond. Picture two people hitting the same wall. One crumbles, convinced it's proof they'll never succeed. The other sees it as a challenge to climb higher, to grow stronger. Both faced the same obstacle, but only one understood the Stoic secret. Perception shapes reality, and that's just the beginning. Over the next few minutes, we'll break down the 4 pillars of Stoic resilience: how you perceive challenges, the actions you take despite fear, the unshakable will to keep moving forward, and the quiet strength to bend without breaking. This isn't just ancient wisdom, it's a battle-tested blueprint for modern life. Whether you're facing a personal loss, a professional rejection, or just the daily grind of a world that feels chaotic, Stoicism offers more than comfort, it offers power. The kind of power that doesn't shout or rage, but stands firm in the storm. So if you're ready to transform the way you see failure, to walk away from every stumble, not with shame but with strategy, you're in the right place. Because by the end of this, you won't just understand Stoic principles, you'll know how to wield them. The Stoic definition of dominance flips everything you've been taught on its head. Forget about controlling people or outcomes. Real power begins when you stop demanding the world, bend to your will, and start commanding your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who steered Rome through wars and plagues, scribbled this truth in his private journal: you have power over your mind, not outside events. That single sentence unravels the illusion so many of us chase, the belief that success means eliminating obstacles. Stoics don't waste energy fighting what they can't change. Instead, they train relentlessly to master the one thing they can: their inner world. Think of it like this: 2 athletes suffer the same career-ending injury. One drowns in self-pity, convinced life's unfair. The other, trained in Stoic resilience, asks, what can I control right now? They rehab, study game footage, coach others, turning a seeming dead end into a detour toward reinvention. That's the mindset of modern entrepreneurs like Sarah Blakely, who faced rejections for years while developing Spanx. Instead of internalizing no as failure, she saw each no as data. This pitch isn't working, time to refine it. Her setbacks weren't roadblocks, they were the chisels shaping her eventual empire. So here's the question to wrestle with: what failure have you mislabeled as defeat? Maybe it's the promotion you didn't get, the relationship that fell apart, or the dream that stalled. Stoicism challenges you to wipe the lens clean, to see these moments not as proof of your limits, but as invitations to level up. Because dominance isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise, recalibrate, and turn every stumble into a step forward. Epictetus, the former slave turned Stoic master, dropped a truth bomb 2,000 years ago that still shatters illusions today. It's not what happens, but how you interpret it. Let that sink in. The same event, a job loss, a breakup, a missed opportunity, can either destroy you or become the pivot point for your greatest reinvention. The difference: perception. This is where Stoics wage their first and most crucial battle, not against the world, but against their own knee-jerk reactions. Take Seneca, Rome's wealthiest philosopher, exiled to a barren island by a jealous emperor. Most would see banishment as a death sentence, but Seneca, he called it an opportunity to focus on philosophy without distraction. His exile produced some of history's most profound letters on resilience, works we still study today. That's the Stoic edge, the mental alchemy of transforming poison into medicine. Here's the fork in the road most people miss. Reactive perception says, "This is unfair." Why me? It obsesses over blame and wallows in victimhood. Proactive perception asks, what can I learn here? How does this reveal my blind spots? It's the difference between a sailor cursing the wind and adjusting the sails. History's most dominant figures, from Lincoln's political failures to Edison's 1,000 flawed prototypes, shared one trait. They didn't just endure setbacks, they interrogated them. So here's your challenge. Pick a recent setback, the project that flopped, the harsh criticism, the plan that derailed. Now, strip away the emotional charge and ask, what if this isn't a stop sign, but a detour to something better? Maybe that rejected proposal forces you to refine your pitch into something irresistible. Maybe the betrayal teaches you to trust your instincts sooner. The obstacle isn't the villain in your story, it's the rigorous teacher you didn't know you needed. This mental shift isn't naive optimism, it's strategic recalibration. The Stoics didn't pretend pain didn't exist, they simply refused to let it dictate their next move. Your perception is the lens that turns stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And the moment you clean that lens, you start seeing opportunities where others only see dead ends. The Stoic secret to unstoppable confidence starts with a single question. What's actually yours to command? Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, drew a line in the sand 2,000 years ago that still separates those who feel powerless from those who wield real influence. Some things are up to us and some are not. Sounds simple, right? Yet this razor-sharp distinction, the dichotomy of control, is where most people leak their energy daily. Picture an Olympic sprinter moments before the gun fires. They can't control the weather, the crowd's noise, or their competitors' training, but they can control their breathing, their focus, the years of disciplined practice that brought them here. That's the Stoic athlete's edge. They pour every ounce of effort into their lane, their form, their mindset, while letting go of everything beyond it. The result: unshakable presence when it matters most. Now zoom out to your life. How much mental real estate are you renting to things you'll never govern? Your boss's mood, the stock market swings, whether someone likes your post. Stoicism forces a reckoning. Dominance isn't about bending the universe to your will. It's about redirecting your attention to the territory where you're the undisputed ruler. Your judgments, your choices, your responses. Consider how this plays out in high-stakes negotiations. The weakest person in the room obsesses over the other side's reactions, desperate to be liked. The truly dominant, they focus solely on crafting airtight arguments, reading subtle cues, and staying adaptable precisely because they've stopped needing a particular outcome. That's the paradox. By releasing your grip on externals, you gain leverage. Here's the litmus test. When frustration hits a delayed flight, a rude comment, a missed deadline, ask, did this happen because of me or despite me? If it's the latter, save your fire for battles you can actually win. The entrepreneur who pivots when funding falls through instead of raging at investors. The parent who models calm for their child during chaos rather than screaming at traffic. These are the modern Stoics, asserting dominance not by force, but by flawless allocation of effort. Your assignment today: audit your mental bandwidth. For 1 hour, notice every time your emotions spike over something outside your control. Then do the radical thing: drop the rope. That coworker's snark, not your department. The rain ruining your picnic. Redirect to planning an epic indoor fort. This isn't passivity, it's the ultimate power move. Because when you stop wrestling with immovable objects, you free up strength to move mountains. Amor Fati, love of fate. It sounds radical, almost unnatural. Why would anyone embrace the very struggles that make them want to scream into a pillow? But this is where Stoicism takes resilience from admirable to unstoppable. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who famously wrestled with suffering, stole this idea straight from the Stoics. Don't just bear what's necessary, love it. Marcus Aurelius put it even sharper: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Notice the language here, not despite the obstacle, but because of it. This is the mental pivot that separates those who endure adversity from those who weaponize it. Take Thomas Edison's lab burning to the ground in 1914. Flames consumed years of research, prototypes, and irreplaceable notes. Most would collapse under the weight of that loss. Edison, he stood in the ashes and said, "All our mistakes are now gone. We can start fresh tomorrow." Within weeks, his team rebuilt, and within months, they revolutionized phonograph technology. That's Amor Fati in action, not just accepting fate, but greeting it like an old friend who's pushing you towards something greater. Here's the trap we all fall into. We treat adversity like an uninvited guest, something to tolerate until life gets back to normal. But Stoics argue there is no normal, only the constant ebb and flow of challenges designed to shape you. Think of a blacksmith's forge. The metal doesn't become a sword by lying comfortably on the table. It's hammered, heated, and reshaped until it's unbreakable. Your struggles, they're not interruptions to your story, they are the story. So let's make this practical. Look at the frustration gnawing at you right now, the delayed promotion, the financial strain, the health setback. What if, instead of resisting it, you asked, how could this exact situation be preparing me for what's next? Maybe the job rejection forces you to build skills you've neglected. Maybe the heartbreak teaches you to set boundaries you'll need for future love. Amor Fati doesn't mean slapping a smile on pain. It means mining it for the hidden curriculum. History's most resilient figures didn't just survive their storms, they learned to dance in the rain. Viktor Frankl, the psychologist who survived Auschwitz, later wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, his attitude." That's the core of this philosophy. When you stop fighting reality and start leveraging it, you don't just endure life's blows, you redirect their force. So here's your challenge. Pick one current struggle and reframe it, not as a curse, but as a co-conspirator in your growth. Because the moment you stop resisting fate, you start riding its momentum. Imagine standing at the edge of a high dive, paralyzed by the thought of everything that could go wrong: the slip, the belly flop, the sting of failure. Now imagine climbing down, rehearsing each step in your mind, the grip of your toes on the board, the arc of your body cutting cleanly through the air. Suddenly, the fear loosens its grip. That's the essence of Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of negative visualization. Seneca, the philosopher who advised emperors, called it rehearsing adversity in advance. Not to dwell on doom, but to disarm it. He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it's necessary. He wrote, In other words, the anxiety we pour into imagining disasters often outweighs the actual event. But when you confront those scenarios head-on, you strip them of their power to shock. Consider how elite athletes use this tactic. Before a championship game, they don't just visualize victory, they mentally walk through missed shots, turnovers, and roaring crowds. By preemptively facing these challenges, they transform potential panic into poise. The same principle applies to modern entrepreneurs. Amazon's leadership famously practices narrative-based risk planning, scripting detailed responses to hypothetical crises, supply chain collapses, PR nightmares, even alien invasions seriously. It's not pessimism, it's strategic immunity to surprise. Here's the twist most miss. Negative visualization isn't about expecting the worst, it's about rehearsing your resilience. When Seneca pictured losing his wealth or status, he wasn't indulging fear, he was testing his ability to adapt. Poverty is only burdensome to those who refuse it, he noted. By mentally walking through loss, he ensured it could never truly break him. That's the Stoic edge. When you've already survived a crisis in your mind, the real thing feels like a second draft. So let's make this visceral. Think of a risk you've been avoiding, a difficult conversation, a career leap, a financial decision. Now, close your eyes and play out the worst-case scenario. Did the relationship fracture? Did the business fail? Sit with that outcome until the dread fades, then ask, what would I do next? Maybe you'd rebuild. Maybe you'd pivot. The moment you script your comeback, the monster under the bed becomes a map on the wall. This practice reveals a profound truth. Fear thrives in the abstract. It's the unknown that paralyzes us, but when you drag those shadows into the light, they shrink to manageable size. That's why Navy SEAL train in simulated hellscapes, why firefighters drill for infernos. They know what Seneca knew. Preparation isn't just about skill, it's about sovereignty over your own mind. So tonight, before sleep, try this. Pick one fear you've been sidestepping. Walk through it step by step until you can see the other side, because the obstacle you've been dreading, it might just be the bridge to your next breakthrough. Epictetus cuts through the noise of modern life with one razor-sharp command. First say what you'd be, then do what you must. This isn't just philosophy, it's an operating system for intentional living. Most people drift through their days mistaking motion for progress, checking boxes without ever asking if those boxes lead to who they want to become. The Stoics called this the discipline of action, the practice of aligning every deed, no matter how small, with your deepest values. Picture two CEOs facing the same ethical dilemma. One caves to shareholder pressure, sacrificing principles for short-term gains. The other, steeped in Stoic thought, pauses and asks, what kind of leader does this moment demand? Then acts accordingly, even if it costs them personally. That's the difference between reactive busyness and purposeful action. The first is a hamster wheel, the second is a compass. We've all felt this tension, scrolling mindlessly when we vowed to read more, saying yes to projects that drain us because we're afraid to say no. These aren't just small missteps, they're identity leaks. Every time you act against your declared values, you dilute your sense of self. But here's the flip side. When your actions mirror your aspirations, even mundane choices become transformative. The student who studies not just for grades but to become a healer. The parent who models patience not because it's easy, but because that's who they choose to be. History's most decisive figures shared this trait. When Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he didn't poll his cabinet for popularity. He asked, "Is it right?" When Rosa Parks refused to move, she wasn't thinking about convenience. She was answering the question, what does my dignity require? These weren't just actions, they were incarnations of conviction. So let's bring this home, grab a pen and finish this sentence. At my best, I am someone who now ordered yesterday. How many of your choices reflected that ideal? That phone call you rushed through, the feedback you avoided giving, the extra hour wasted. Where did you autopilot through life instead of steering? The gap between who you are and who you declare you'd be is where Stoicism goes to work, not with guilt but with clarity. This week, try Epictetus' challenge in real time. Before any significant action, sending that email, having that hard conversation, even choosing lunch, pause and ask, does this align with the person I'm committed to becoming? You'll start noticing something revolutionary. When your deeds match your declarations, friction fades, not because life gets easier, but because you stop wrestling with yourself. And that's where true power lies, not in controlling outcomes, but in commanding your choices with unwavering consistency. The world will always give you reasons to compromise. Stoicism gives you the tools to stand firm. Marcus Aurelius jolted himself awake each morning with a brutal reminder: you could leave life right now. Not to dwell on darkness, but to ignite clarity. This is Memento Mori, the Stoic practice of remembering death to sharpen life. Far from morbid, it's the ultimate productivity hack. When time feels infinite, we dawdle. When we confront its fragility, every moment becomes charged with purpose. Think of Steve Jobs standing at death's door in 2004 after his cancer diagnosis. He didn't spiral into despair, he doubled down on innovation. Remembering I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered, he said. That awareness birthed the iPhone, Pixar's Magic, and his legendary Stanford speech. Death wasn't his enemy, it was his co-founder, pushing him to cut through distractions and create what mattered. Here's the mental shift most miss. Mortality isn't a threat, it's a spotlight. It illuminates the difference between busy and alive, the emails you'll forget in a week, the grudges you're nursing, the dreams you're postponing. None survive the Memento Mori test. Seneca put it bluntly: it's not that we have too little time, but that we waste so much of it. Ancient Romans kept skulls on their desks not to fear death, but to disarm its power to distract. So let's make this visceral. Picture your last day. Not in some distant future, but today. What conversations would you finally have? What apologies would you offer? What bold move would you make if failure no longer mattered? That's the Stoic edge, using mortality as a whetstone to sharpen your priorities. The entrepreneur who launches the idea they've been sitting on. The parent who puts down their phone to truly listen. The artist who shares their work despite fear. These aren't just actions, they're rebellions against the trivial. History's most vibrant figures shared this practice. The samurai wrote death poems before battle. Queen Elizabeth, I kept a ring engraved with I came, I saw, I conquered as her health failed. Even modern icons like Toni Morrison wrote as if I were dead to bypass fear of judgment. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start acting like today is your masterpiece. Your challenge: borrow a page from the Stoic playbook. Tonight, as you turn off the lights, ask, if this were my last night, would I be proud of how I spent today? No guilt, just clarity. Then wake up tomorrow and live the answer, because the clock isn't counting down, it's counting up to what you'll dare to do while you still can. Marcus Aurelius watched flames lick at steel in a blacksmith's forge and saw more than destruction, he saw transformation. The fire forges the steel, he wrote, capturing a truth that echoes through every great comeback story. This is the heart of Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, the radical Stoic premise that barriers aren't roadblocks but breadcrumbs leading you to an unexpected destination. Take J.K. Rowling, a single mother surviving on welfare when she penned Harry Potter. 12 publishers rejected her manuscript, most would have seen that as proof to quit. Rowling, she later called those rejections the stripping away of the inessential. Each no forced her to refine her pitch, deepen her world building until finally, when the yes came, she was ready for the avalanche of success that followed. The obstacles didn't block her path, they built it. Here's what the Stoics understood that most miss. Adversity doesn't just test you, it reconfigures you. A river carving a canyon isn't being thwarted by the rock, it's being guided by it. The same applies to your life. That job rejection, it might be redirecting you toward a field where your talents shine brighter. The failed relationship, it could be creating space for a partnership that aligns with your growth. Even physical limitations follow this pattern. Consider Stephen Hawking's ALS diagnosis. As his body deteriorated, his mind expanded into realms of theoretical physics most healthy scientists never reach. The disease didn't silence him, it became the catalyst for his most groundbreaking work. So let's flip the script. What if the thing you're resisting isn't a wall but a doorway? The ancient Stoics trained for this mental pivot with a drill called Premeditatio Malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios not to fear them, but to mine them for hidden advantages. When Holliday's book publisher suddenly backed out, he didn't crumble. He self-published, honing marketing skills that later made him a media powerhouse. The obstacle, it was the way. Your move now. Pick one current struggle, the project that's stalling, the criticism that stung, the plan that unraveled. Ask, how could this exact situation be secretly working for me? Maybe the financial squeeze forces you to discover frugal creativity. Maybe the loneliness teaches you to cultivate self-reliance that attracts healthier connections. The fire feels like an enemy until you realize it's the forge. And you're not just the steel, you're the blacksmith. Stoicism doesn't just teach resilience, it reveals a hidden truth about how we grow. Nassim Taleb called it antifragility, the rare quality of systems that don't merely survive chaos but thrive because of it. Think of a bone. When it breaks and heals, it becomes denser at the fracture site. Stress, properly metabolized, becomes strength. Seneca saw this 2,000 years earlier when he wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." The Stoics weren't content with bouncing back, they aimed to bounce forward, using every blow as a catalyst for becoming unbreakable. Consider Navy SEALs Hell Week. 5 days of sleep deprivation, icy surf torture, and relentless physical punishment. The goal isn't just to test endurance, it's to engineer a psychological breakthrough. Trainees discover that their perceived limits are illusions. What feels like breaking point, it's actually the threshold where real transformation begins. One SEAL instructor put it bluntly, "We don't train you to handle stress, we train you to need stress to perform." That's antifragility in action, the alchemy of turning pressure into power. Now zoom out to your life, that layoff that forced you to freelance, the illness that reshaped your priorities, the betrayal that taught you discernment. These weren't just hardships, they were upgrades in disguise. Taleb's genius was recognizing that antifragile systems, whether economies, immune systems, or human spirits, don't just resist shocks. They require them to reach their highest potential. A child sheltered from all germs grows up with a weak immune system. A tree never tested by wind develops shallow roots, and a person shielded from failure. They miss the chance to develop stoic armor. Here's the pivot most miss. Antifragility isn't automatic. It demands active engagement with adversity. Seneca didn't just endure exile, he mined it for wisdom. Nelson Mandela didn't simply survive prison. He used those 27 years to hone the empathy and strategic patience that would later dismantle apartheid. The key lies in what psychologists call stress inoculation, deliberately exposing yourself to manageable challenges to build capacity for bigger ones. So let's make this practical. Look back at your toughest season. Maybe it was a financial freefall that taught you frugality, a heartbreak that revealed your worth, a failure that uncovered hidden creativity. Now ask, what did this experience activate in me that comfort never could? That's your antifragility blueprint, the proof that you're not just unbroken by life's chaos, but reforged by it. The Stoics knew this secret. The trials you faced weren't obstacles to your growth. They were the very fuel for it, and the next time life strikes, you won't just withstand the blow, you'll absorb its force and use it to strike back stronger. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon against daily stress, one he used while ruling an empire under constant threat of war and betrayal. He called it the view from above, a mental exercise so powerful it can shrink today's crises into tomorrow's footnotes. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, frustration boiling over. Now imagine lifting out of your car, rising higher until you see the entire city grid, then the continent, then Earth as a pale blue dot in the cosmos. Those honking cars, they're ants on a speck of dust. That urgent meeting, a fleeting blip in human history. This shift in perspective wasn't just poetic, it was practical. The emperor would write in his journal, "Think of the substance of the whole, think of the vastness of time, consider the rapid change of each thing, how quickly it passes." He wasn't dismissing problems, he was contextualizing them. Modern science backs this ancient hack. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a psychological shift when viewing Earth from space. Suddenly, political borders vanish, personal grudges seem absurd. What felt urgent becomes trivial against the backdrop of infinity. You don't need a rocket to access this mindset. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who practiced temporal distancing, imagining their current stress from a future perspective, reported 30% lower anxiety. That's the Stoic superpower, zooming out to realize most storms are just ripples in a vast ocean. Here's how to apply it. Next time you're spiraling over a mistake or conflict, ask, will this matter in 5 years? The criticism from a coworker, the missed sale, the awkward social moment most won't even register on your future radar. Consider Warren Buffett's 25 rule. When evaluating opportunities, he asks if they'll still matter in 25 years. The same filter works for setbacks, the breakup that feels earth-shattering now. History shows it often clears space for a love better aligned with your growth. The failed business, it might be the necessary tuition for your eventual success, but this isn't about minimizing pain, it's about maximizing clarity. When Serena Williams faced her first major defeat, she didn't just wallow. She stood on that empty court afterward and visualized future victories. "This loss is just a comma, not a period," she later explained. That's the view from above in action, seeing today's struggle as a single frame in your epic movie. Try this tonight. Step outside, look at the stars, and pick one problem gnawing at you. Now imagine yourself 5 years from now looking back. What advice would that future wiser you offer? Maybe they'd say, "That job rejection led me to start my own company," or "That illness taught me to cherish every healthy day." The cosmos doesn't erase challenges, it reveals their true size. And when you see your life as both infinitesimal and infinitely precious, something shifts. You stop sweating the small stuff, not because it doesn't matter, but because you're too busy building what will. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's most influential Stoic teachers, had a brutal morning ritual. He'd dunk his head in icy water before dawn. Not because he enjoyed discomfort, but because he understood its power to forge unshakable resilience. Difficulties show what men are. he declared, stripping away the illusion that strength is something we're born with. Real toughness isn't inherited, it's built through deliberate, voluntary discomfort. This is the Stoic gymnasium where character is sculpted, cold showers that train your mind to embrace what it resists, fasting that teaches you hunger won't kill you, or choosing the harder path when the easy one beckons. Modern science confirms what the ancients knew. When Navy SEAL candidates endure Hell Week, they're not just proving their physical limits, they're rewiring their brains to associate stress with growth. Researchers call this stress inoculation, small, controlled doses of adversity that prepare you for life's inevitable storms. Take David Goggins, the ultramarathon runner who transformed himself from an overweight exterminator into one of the world's toughest athletes. His secret: you have to build calluses on your mind just like on your hands, he says. That means voluntarily running when exhausted, reading when distracted, or sitting with boredom instead of reaching for dopamine hits. But here's where most miss the point. Voluntary discomfort isn't about punishing yourself, it's about liberating yourself. Seneca slept on hard floors despite his wealth, not to suffer, but to prove to himself that luxury was a choice, not a necessity. The moment you realize you can thrive without constant comfort, you break the chains of dependency. Imagine two people stuck in a broken elevator. One panics, sweating through their shirt. The other, trained in discomfort, takes deep breaths and starts problem solving. Same situation, vastly different outcomes. So let's make this practical. Your challenge this week isn't to suffer needlessly. It's to choose one comfort to relinquish. Maybe it's skipping the snooze button to meditate in the quiet dark. Turning off notifications for 3 hours to reclaim focus. Or swapping that midday snack for a glass of water while observing your hunger without acting on it. The goal isn't deprivation, it's discovery. What happens when you prove to yourself that discomfort won't break you? You stop fearing life's inevitable hiccups. Traffic jams become moments of reflection. Criticism transforms into feedback, and setbacks, they're just another rep in your mental gym. The Stoics knew this truth. The muscle of resilience only grows when tested. So ask yourself, what comfort have you been clinging to like a security blanket? And what might happen if you voluntarily dropped it, just for a while? Because on the other side of that discomfort isn't just endurance, it's freedom. There's a quiet confidence that needs no audience, a self-assurance so deep it doesn't bother announcing itself. Seneca captured this perfectly. A man's as miserable as he thinks he is, and as happy as he resolves to be. Notice what's absent: any mention of applause, titles, or external validation. Stoic confidence isn't about puffing your chest or silencing critics. It's the unshakable knowledge that your worth isn't up for debate. Picture two leaders entering a tense negotiation. One leans on flashy credentials, name-dropping, and aggressive posturing. The other, they listen more than they speak, ask probing questions, and remain unfazed by provocations. The first is performing strength. The second embodies it. History's most effective diplomats, from Marcus Aurelius navigating Roman politics to modern mediators diffusing international crises, share this trait. Their power comes from inner alignment, not outer approval. Here's the critical distinction most miss. Arrogance is a performance for others, while confidence is a private conversation with yourself. Arrogance shouts, "Look at me." Confidence whispers, "I know who I am." Take Eleanor Roosevelt's transformation. Early in her public life, she agonized over criticism, confessing she'd lie awake replaying slights. But through Stoic practice, she cultivated what she called an inner citadel, a mental fortress no insult could breach. By her later years, she could calmly face hecklers, even quipping, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." That's Stoic confidence in action, not the absence of doubt, but the mastery of it. So let's turn the mirror inward. Where are you still outsourcing your self-worth? The likes on your last post, your manager's praise, the neighbor's envy over your car. Every time you seek external validation, you hand someone else the keys to your emotional state. The Stoic alternative: become your own benchmark. Journal like Marcus Aurelius did, not for publication, but for self-reckoning. Measure yourself against your past iterations, not others' highlight reels. This shift isn't about ego, it's about sovereignty. When the comedian Steve Martin was asked why he avoided reading his early reviews, he replied, "Because I'd believed the good ones too much and the bad ones even more." That's the wisdom of anchoring your identity beyond the fickle tides of opinion. Confidence isn't thinking you'll never fail, it's knowing failure doesn't define you. So next time you feel the itch to prove yourself, pause. The strongest statement you can make isn't heard, it's felt. Marcus Aurelius carried a secret weapon in the chaotic courts of Rome, one that required no words at all. Scribbled in his private journal was this dagger-sharp reminder: waste no time arguing what a good man should be one. That's the Stoic art of strategic silence, a discipline that turns restraint into power. Picture two leaders in a heated boardroom debate. One interrupts, scrambles to rebut every point, their voice rising with each objection. The other, they let the tension hang, absorbing arguments like a sponge before responding with surgical precision. The difference isn't just temperament, it's tactical. Silence isn't passive, it's the ultimate assertion of control. Modern negotiators understand this instinctively. FBI hostage mediator Chris Voss trains agents to deploy. The late-night FM DJ voice, calm, measured, punctuated by deliberate pauses. When you slow down, he explains, you force the other side to fill the void, often revealing their true position. It's why skilled salespeople let awkward silences linger after quoting a price. The first to speak loses leverage, but this isn't just about tactics, it's about psychology. Neuroscience reveals that our brains interpret silence lasting more than 4 seconds as a threat, triggering discomfort that compels people to backtrack, concede, or over-explain. The Stoics weaponized this instinct 2,000 years before brain scans proved it. Here's the trap we all fall into. We confuse volume with value. The executive who dominates meetings to prove their intelligence. The parent who lectures instead of listening. Even social media tempts us to broadcast half-formed thoughts rather than marinate in reflection. But true dominance, the Stoic kind, recognizes that words are currency. Spend them recklessly and you devalue your voice. Invest them sparingly and each syllable carries weight. Consider Warren Buffett's annual shareholder letters, famously concise yet dissected like scripture. Or Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legal strategy, winning landmark cases with fewer words, not more. So let's turn the lens inward. When do you talk at people instead of with them? That nervous habit of filling every pause with chatter, the compulsion to justify decisions that require no explanation. Beneath that verbal overflow often lurks insecurity, the fear that if we stop performing, we'll disappear. But here's the paradox: when you stop scrambling for attention, people lean in to catch what you do say. Like a conductor lowering their baton to hush an orchestra, your silence becomes a gravitational force. The next time you're tempted to fill the air, try this Stoic drill. Before speaking, ask, is this necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? 3 filters that separate signal from noise. You'll start noticing how often we speak out of habit, not purpose. And when you do break silence, watch how your words land with newfound authority. Because mastery of speech begins with mastery of stillness. And that's a power no one can take from you. Marcus Aurelius never intended his journal to be read by anyone. let alone studied centuries later as one of history's greatest works of philosophy. Those private pages, now called meditations, were his daily ritual to sharpen his mind before facing the chaos of ruling Rome. Imagine the most powerful man in the ancient world, candlelight flickering pre-dawn, wrestling his thoughts onto parchment like a boxer sparring with his own shadows. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, he wrote. Not to dwell on negativity, but to disarm it. This wasn't just journaling, it was mental armor smithing. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics practiced. Structured reflection builds resilience. A Harvard study tracked two groups through stressful periods. One journaled about daily events. The other answered three specific questions. What went well? What challenged me? How did I respond? The second group reported 23% higher stress tolerance. That's the Stoic journaling edge. It's not a diary of what happened, but a training log for how you engaged with it. Take Satya Nadella at Microsoft. Before pivotal meetings, he writes two lists, what I control and what I don't. It's a direct descendant of Epictetus' Dichotomy, sharpening focus where it matters most. Here's how to build your own Stoic morning ritual. First, light before screens hijack your attention. Ask three questions. What's one obstacle I anticipate today, and how can I reframe it as fuel? This primes your mind for proactive perception. Next, what virtue will this day demand? Patience in traffic, courage in a difficult conversation. Naming it activates it. Finally, who needs my best self today? Maybe it's your team, your child, or the stranger who'll cross your path. This isn't fluffy inspiration, it's deliberate identity reinforcement. Like a sculptor chiseling marble, you're shaping who you'll choose to be before circumstances decide for you. Tonight, try the Stoic night audit. Grab any notebook. Marcus used cheap parchment and answer, where did I act aligned with my values today? Celebrate that win. Where did I fall short? Not to self-flagellate, but to course correct. Then the most potent question, what's one hard truth I've been avoiding? Maybe it's a relationship needing boundaries, a health habit you've neglected, or a dream you've postponed with excuses. The page doesn't judge, it just reflects. And in that reflection, you'll find what Marcus found, the clarity to lead empires or simply to lead yourself through another day with intention. The ink becomes your iron. Cato the Younger stood before Rome's Senate, his toga deliberately torn, his body smeared with dirt, a living protest against corruption. While others compromised for power, he became Stoicism incarnate, unbending in principle, yet adaptable in tactics. When Julius Caesar offered him political favors, Cato turned his back and walked away, whispering to a stunned colleague, "I'd rather stand with honor than kneel for advantage." Centuries later, we remember not Caesar's wealth or victories, but Cato's unwavering integrity. That's the Stoic paradox. Those who chase fame rarely earn enduring respect, while those who cultivate virtue become timeless role models. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, embodied this truth differently. A shipwreck left him stranded in Athens with nothing but the clothes on his back. Instead of despairing, he wandered into a bookstore, discovered Socrates' teachings, and rebuilt his life, not as a wealthy merchant, but as a philosopher teaching under a painted colonnade called the Stoa. His students didn't follow him for lavish lectures or celebrity connections. They came for the raw power of his character. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth," he'd remind them, "so we can listen twice as much as we speak." Fast forward to modern courts and stadiums. Serena Williams' comeback after life-threatening childbirth complications wasn't just athletic prowess, it was Stoic discipline in motion. "I've had to learn to be my own role model," she confessed when critics doubted her return. like Cato choosing principle over politics, like Zeno transforming ruin into wisdom, Serena redefined victory on her own terms. So here's the challenge history whispers to us, whose resilience lights your path, not the figures with the most followers or trophies, but those whose choices in darkness make you stand taller in your own struggles. Maybe it's a grandparent who smiled through hardship, a teacher who believed in you when no one else did, or Malala Yousafzai turning assassination attempts into global advocacy. Their power wasn't in their circumstances, it was in their response. And that's the ultimate Stoic lesson. You don't need a perfect mentor, just someone whose virtues echo the person you're striving to become. Tonight, try this. Before sleep, name one person, historical or personal, whose grit inspires you. Not their achievements, but the way they faced obstacles. Then ask, what single quality of theirs can I practice tomorrow? Because role models aren't meant to be put on pedestals. They're mirrors showing us the strength we already carry. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi death camps, discovered a truth that echoes Stoic wisdom. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That gap, often no longer than a heartbeat, is where true freedom lies. It's the moment before you snap at a rude comment, the breath before you hit send on an angry email, the split second where you decide whether to escalate or disarm. Epictetus framed it as a mental checkpoint. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Not every thought deserves action. Not every feeling requires expression. Picture a couple mid-argument. One throws a cutting remark. The other's face flushes instinct screams to retaliate. But then something shifts. They pause just long enough to ask, will this help or hurt? That hesitation changes everything. The room's temperature drops. The fight becomes a conversation. History's most skilled negotiators, from hostage mediators to Fortune 500 CEOs, train for this exact skill. They call it tactical patience. Instead of reacting to provocations, they create a buffer zone where logic can override emotion. Here's how this plays out in real time. A manager receives a scathing email from a client. The knee-jerk reaction, fire back a defensive reply. The Stoic move, draft the response, then delete it, sleep on it. Let the initial heat dissipate until what remains is clarity, not ego. Steve Jobs famously used this tactic, often waiting 24 hours before addressing criticisms. I've learned over the years, he admitted, that when you're angry, your vision narrows. That pause, it's not weakness, it's the ultimate power play. Your turn now. Think of a recent moment when emotions hijacked your better judgment. Maybe it was snapping at a loved one or obsessing over a stranger's dismissive glance. Now rewind it. Where could a 3-second pause have altered the outcome? The Stoics weren't suggesting we become emotionless robots, just that we stop letting adrenaline write checks our character can't cash. Try this drill today. Carry a small notebook. Each time you feel triggered, a frustrating call, a social media slight, jot down the impulse that arises. I want to interrupt. I need to prove them wrong. Then force a 5 count before acting. Those seconds are your laboratory, where you dissect raw reaction and choose response instead. Because mastery isn't about never feeling anger or hurt. It's about no longer being enslaved by it. The sting of envy hits without warning. You see a colleague's promotion, a friend's new car, a rival's viral success, and suddenly your stomach tightens. But what if that pang isn't a sign of pettiness, but a hidden compass pointing toward your own unmet ambitions? Seneca saw this trap centuries ago. Comparison is the thief of joy. Yet he also understood envy's secret potential. When harnessed correctly, that gnawing feeling isn't just noise, it's data. It reveals what you truly value but haven't yet claimed for yourself. Take the fierce rivalry between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. For decades, each company's envy of the other's market share fueled relentless innovation. Pepsi's Challenge campaign, Coke's global branding overhauls. Instead of resenting their competitors' wins, they dissected them. Why did that ad resonate? What unmet desire did that product tap into? Their envy became a research lab for their own evolution. That's the Stoic reframe. Jealousy isn't something to suppress, it's something to interrogate. Here's the pivot most miss. Envy doesn't flare up over just anything. It zeroes in on the gaps between where you are and where you sense you could be. When a classmate's award makes you bristle, it's not really about them. It's about the version of you that hasn't yet stepped into the spotlight. The entrepreneur who envies a competitor's sleek storefront isn't petty. They're recognizing their own hunger for excellence. So let's mine your envy for gold. Think of someone who triggers that reaction in you. Maybe it's the influencer with the perfect morning routine, the coworker who speaks up in meetings while you stay silent, or the neighbor who travels endlessly. Now ask, what specific quality or outcome am I actually coveting? Is it their discipline, their audacity, their freedom? Name it. Then here's the Stoic twist: redirect that energy inward. Instead of scrolling through their highlight reel, design your own training plan. Turn their success into your syllabus. History's greatest innovators did this instinctively. Michelangelo didn't sulk when rival sculptors won commissions. He studied their techniques, then surpassed them. Oprah transformed her envy of Barbara Walters' interview style into her own authentic approach. The key isn't to eliminate envy, but to translate it. Your rivals aren't just opponents, they're unwitting mentors, revealing paths you hadn't considered. Tonight, try this exercise. Jot down 3 people who stir envy in you. Next to each name, write the specific trait or achievement that pricks you. Then, and this is crucial, craft one actionable step to cultivate that in your own life. Not through imitation, but through your unique expression. Because envy is just unclaimed ambition in disguise. And the moment you stop resenting others' light, you free yourself to ignite your own. The day winds down, and for most, that means scrolling or zoning out, but the Stoics turned evenings into their most potent growth tool. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on freedom, had a nightly ritual. He'd sit with a single candle and ask 2 razor-sharp questions. What did I control today? Where did I fail to act with virtue? Notice what's missing. Any obsession with outcomes, other people's opinions, or external wins. This wasn't a performance review, it was a character audit. Fast forward to modern life, where apps like Stoic and Reflection replace parchment, but the core remains unchanged. Imagine your phone pinging at 9 p.m., not with a notification but with a prompt. Did your actions today align with who you aspire to be? The power isn't in the tool, it's in the brutal honesty of the pause. Take James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, who credits his success to a simple evening habit, reviewing 3 wins and 1 lesson, not 50 wins, not 0 lessons. The imbalance is deliberate. It trains the mind to spot growth opportunities, not just trophies. Here's where most self-reflection falls short. We either beat ourselves up for mistakes or gloss over them with vague platitudes. The Stoic method slices through both traps. When Marcus Aurelius journaled about losing his temper, he didn't just write, "I was angry." He dissected it. What triggered it? Was the provocation worth my energy? What virtue could I have summoned instead? That's the difference between wallowing and weaponizing your stumbles. So let's make this visceral. Tonight, skip the passive Netflix wind down. Grab any notebook or even your notes app and confront 3 questions. Where did I invest energy in things beyond my control? That argument about politics, the obsession with a rival's success, name them. Next, where did I act out of fear rather than courage? Maybe you bit back truth to keep peace or avoided a tough conversation. Finally, and this is the game changer, what's one small step to course correct tomorrow? Not a grand resolution, but a tactical tweak. The magic lies in specificity. Instead of, "I'll be better," try, "I'll pause for 3 breaths before reacting to criticism." That's how a Silicon Valley CEO used this practice to transform his leadership. After realizing 70% of his evening reflections centered on others' flaws, he shifted focus to his own responses, and within months, his team's morale skyrocketed. Your challenge tonight isn't to dwell on missteps, but to mine them for wisdom, because the unexamined day slips through your fingers, but the reviewed one becomes fuel. And when you consistently align your nights with your highest aspirations, your days start bending to match. Marcus Aurelius could have ruled Rome with an iron fist, demanding obedience through threats and displays of power. Instead, he led with a radical principle: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. This is Stoic leadership distilled, not barking orders from a pedestal, but embodying the standards you wish to see. Picture 2 military commanders. One screams at troops for showing fear in battle while trembling behind closed doors. The other, they train alongside their soldiers, admitting their own doubts while demonstrating how to push through them. The difference isn't just style, it's substance. Authority rooted in fear creates compliance. Leadership rooted in example inspires loyalty that no paycheck can buy. History's most enduring leaders understood this. When Nelson Mandela took charge of a fractured South Africa, he didn't just preach reconciliation, he lived it. Inviting his white jailers to his presidential inauguration, sharing tea with politicians who'd supported apartheid, his actions whispered what speeches couldn't. This is how we move forward. Contrast that with executives who demand 70-hour workweeks while jetting off on Fridays, or parents who scold children for screen addiction while glued to their own phones. The Stoics called this the hypocrisy gap, the space between what we expect from others and what we tolerate in ourselves. Nowhere does this play out more visibly than in sports. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden never lectured players about perseverance. He showed up 30 minutes early to every practice, sleeves rolled up, ready to work. When a star player questioned grueling drills, Wooden simply said, "I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do myself." He didn't need to yell. His sweat-stained clipboard did the talking. That's the alchemy of authentic leadership. When your life becomes the lesson, people stop resisting and start mirroring. So here's the mirror for you. Think of a role where you lead, whether managing a team, parenting, or even steering your own habits. Now ask, where are my "do as I say, not as I do" blind spots? Maybe you insist on punctuality but miss deadlines yourself. Demand honesty yet sugarcoat tough feedback. The Stoic fix isn't self-flagellation, it's alignment. Start small. Next time you're about to correct someone, pause. Is this a standard you've upheld yourself? If not, either lower the expectation or rise to meet it. Because true influence doesn't come from titles or authority. It grows when people look at your life and think, if they can do it, so can I. And that kind of leadership, it doesn't just change teams or families, it changes history. Seneca once wrote to his friend Lucilius with a brutal piece of advice. There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. He wasn't dismissing genuine hardship, he was exposing the absurd amount of energy we waste on trifles. Gossip that fades by noon, imagined slights from strangers, the endless chatter of opinions that hold no real weight in our lives. The Stoics called this the art of indifference, not callousness, but a deliberate filtering system for the mind. Imagine your attention as a fortress gate. You wouldn't let every wandering traveler inside, yet we fling the gates wide open for every passing thought, notification, or petty drama. Modern life amplifies this challenge. Social media is a factory of manufactured outrage algorithms feeding us controversies designed to hijack our nervous systems. A celebrity's feud, a stranger's hot take, a viral debate over something trivial, all masquerading as urgent. The Stoic antidote, Seneca's razor: we must make it our business to have no business with what doesn't concern us. When a Roman senator tried to bait him with rumors, Seneca simply replied, "If that's true, I'll correct it. If it's false, it's not my problem." No indignation, no frantic defense, just a redirect of focus to what actually mattered. Consider Warren Buffett's two-list strategy. He tells managers to write their top 5 priorities, then avoid the rest at all costs. Why? Because the real enemy of excellence isn't failure, it's distraction. The entrepreneur who checks their likes instead of refining their product. The student who refreshes comment sections instead of studying. Even ancient Rome had its noise-caught intrigues, petty rivalries, but the Stoics trained to spot the difference between storms and ripples. Here's the litmus test. When you feel your pulse quicken over something, a comment, a news headline, a coworker's tone, ask, will this matter in a month? If not, it's mental clutter. The athlete who tunes out crowd taunts to focus on their form. The artist who creates despite critics. They're not suppressing emotion, they're allocating it wisely. So tonight, try this audit. Scroll through your phone's screen time report. How many minutes went to things that nourished you versus things that merely agitated? The Stoic choice isn't to never glance at the noise, it's to refuse to let it set up camp in your mind. Because the quieter the static, the clearer your next move becomes. Tim Ferriss stumbled upon a truth the Stoics knew centuries ago. We don't need more motivation to chase goals. We need a clearer way to confront what's holding us back. His fear-setting exercise, inspired by Seneca's practice of Premeditatio Malorum, flips traditional goal setting on its head. Instead of fixating on the glittering summit, it asks, what's the worst that could happen, and how would I survive it? Seneca put it bluntly, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The monsters under our beds shrink when we drag them into the light. Take an entrepreneur hesitating to launch their dream venture. The typical advice, visualize success. The Stoic alternative, write down every possible catastrophe: running out of money, embarrassing failure, even bankruptcy. Then coldly assess the odds. Is the market truly saturated, or is that an assumption? Would losing savings destroy you, or force you to develop skills you've neglected? Finally, and this is the masterstroke, script your comeback plan. How would you rebuild? Who could help? Suddenly, the nightmare loses its fangs. This isn't pessimism, it's psychological inoculation. History's boldest moves were often made by those who'd already survived their fears mentally. Before Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat, she'd rehearsed the consequences: arrest, violence, ostracism. Yet she also knew her community would rally. Elon Musk famously calculated that even if SpaceX failed, humanity needed interplanetary backup. By naming the worst-case scenario and realizing it wouldn't kill him, he bet his fortune on rockets. Here's your challenge. Grab paper and divide it into 3 columns. In the first, list every fear holding you back from a current goal. I'll look foolish. I'll lose money. People will laugh. In the second, assign each a realistic probability. That voice saying, everyone will mock me. Most are too busy worrying about their own flaws to notice yours. Finally, in the third column, plot your recovery plan for each scenario. failed launch. You've now got a portfolio piece. Rejection. You've identified gatekeepers to bypass next time. The magic lies in specificity. I might fail is a fog of dread. I could lose $50,000 within 6 months. Forcing me to downsize and freelance is a problem with solutions. Like a fire drill preparing you for real flames, fear setting doesn't just reduce anxiety. It turns you into the kind of person who walks into fires knowing exactly where the exits are. Because once you've stared down your worst-case scenario and realized you'd live to fight another day, the goal stops being a cliff edge and starts looking like a climb you're equipped to handle. Epictetus sketched a simple circle in the dirt to explain one of Stoicism's most liberating truths. Your energy isn't limitless, and where you focus it determines your peace or exhaustion. There are things within our power and things not within our power. He taught, dividing the world into 2 spheres, the inner ring where your choices reign, and the outer chaos you can't control. Picture an activist planting trees in their neighborhood instead of raging at distant climate summits. Their hands stay dirty with real impact while others burn out shouting at clouds. This isn't passivity, it's strategic precision, like an archer conserving arrows for targets within range. Modern psychology echoes this ancient insight. Researchers at Stanford found that people who obsess over national news, polarizing debates, celebrity scandals, economic forecasts report 28% higher stress levels than those who channel energy into local actions. It's not that global issues don't matter, it's that influence shrinks as circles widen. The Stoic approach: master your inner ring, your habits, your responses, your daily contributions, and let that ripple outward. When Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz, he didn't waste energy cursing the guards. He focused on the one space he could control, helping fellow prisoners find meaning in suffering. That inner work didn't just save him, it became a beacon for millions. So here's the wake-up call. Where are you exhausting yourself on battles you can't win? The relatives' politics you'll never change, the algorithm's outrage cycle, the co-worker who drains you with complaints. Draw your own circles tonight. At the center, list what's unequivocally yours: your morning routine, the tone you set at home, the effort you bring to your craft. The next ring, areas where you have partial influence, team projects, community initiatives. The outermost, everything else: stock markets, gossip, others' opinions. Now audit your last week. How much time leaked into the outer rings, leaving your core neglected? The activist who transforms a vacant lot into a garden may not stop global warming, but they create a patch of shade where neighbors gather. The teacher who focuses on one student's spark ignites a lifetime of curiosity. Stoicism's genius lies in recognizing that real change starts where your influence begins, not where it ends. And when you stop overreaching, you discover something revolutionary. The power you've been seeking was in your hands all along. Marcus Aurelius watched the Tiber River carve its path through Rome, not in days or months, but over centuries, and saw a mirror for human ambition. Time is a river, he wrote, and violent haste only exhausts you before you reach the bend. We live in an age that worships speed. Overnight success, rapid-fire replies, 2 days shipping for everything from shoes to self-worth. But the Stoics understood something radical: that patience isn't passive waiting. It's active trust in the process. Consider bamboo. For 5 years after planting, nothing visible happens: no shoots, no leaves, just silent growth underground as roots spread wide and deep. Then, in a matter of weeks, it rockets 90 feet tall. The impatient farmer might have dug it up in year 3, never realizing their harvest was moments away. History's most enduring victories share this rhythm. Michelangelo spent 4 years flat on his back painting the Sistine Chapel, brushstrokes invisible to crowds below. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before reaching the White House, each defeat refining his voice. Even the Wright brothers' first flight lasted 12 seconds, a blink that rewrote human possibility. The common thread: they measured progress in depth, not speed. When a young entrepreneur complained to Warren Buffett that his strategy took too long, Buffett replied, "You can't produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant." So here's the uncomfortable question. What are you rushing that needs time to ripen? The relationship you're forcing into commitment, the skill you're cramming to master in a weekend, the business you're scaling before nailing your product. Stoic patience isn't about moving slowly, it's about removing the desperation that distorts judgment. Like a sculptor who knows marble cracks under hurried blows, the wise apply pressure where it matters, then let time do the rest. Watch any master craftsman, a sushi chef slicing toro, a glassblower shaping molten crystal. Their power comes not from frantic motion, but from precise pauses. The archer who releases too soon misses the target. The investor who panics during a dip misses the rebound. Even nature's greatest displays the decades an oak takes to mature, the centuries a canyon needs to form, whisper the same truth. Anything worth building obeys rhythms no hustle can override. Tonight, try this recalibration. List one area where impatience is costing you, maybe pushing a team too hard or quitting a habit before results appear. Then borrow a Stoic drill. Set a timer for 5 minutes and sit absolutely still. Notice how your mind screams for distraction. That restless itch, it's the same force that makes you check growth metrics daily or abandon diets after 2 weeks. Training patience in small moments builds the muscle to wield it when stakes are high. Because mastery doesn't come from doing more faster. It comes from knowing what to do while waiting. Epictetus handed his students a mental scalpel with one command: don't let the force of impressions overwhelm you. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every sight, sound, and interaction feels like a neon sign demanding your reaction. The Stoic discipline of assent is about pausing before those flashing lights, interrogating whether they're signaling truth or illusion. Take the modern equivalent of a curt email from your boss. Your gut clenches, "I'm in trouble," but is that the reality or just your amygdala hijacking your judgment? The ancient Greeks called these knee-jerk reactions phantasiae, impressions that masquerade as facts until you hold them up to the light. Consider a surgeon mid-operation. A monitor beeps erratically. Their first impression might scream catastrophe, but training kicks in. They check the leads, recalibrate the machine, and realize it was just a loose connection. That split-second pause between stimulus and response, that's the discipline of assent in action. Now zoom out to your life. When your partner's distracted gaze at dinner triggers, they're losing interest, or a friend's delayed reply whispers, "They're mad at me." You're not seeing reality, you're seeing your own fears projected onto a blank screen. Here's where Stoicism becomes a superpower. Epictetus didn't say ignore impressions, he said interrogate them. Like a scientist examining data, ask, what evidence supports this thought? What contradicts it? The entrepreneur who interprets slow sales as "my product sucks" might discover it's actually their website's checkout button glitching. The parent who assumes their teen's eye roll means disrespect could uncover they're nursing a hidden heartbreak. Every impression is a hypothesis, not a verdict. Your challenge: pick one assumption that's been weighing on you, the colleague's sidelong glance you took as disdain, the quiet weekend you labeled as loneliness. Now dissect it. Write down 3 alternative explanations. That glance, maybe they were squinting at a screen. The quiet, perhaps it wasn't emptiness but the space your creativity needed to breathe. The goal isn't to Pollyanna every situation. It's to recognize that your mind is a storyteller, not a journalist. And when you stop conflating impressions with truth, you reclaim the power to write your own narrative. The invincible will isn't about brute force or relentless ambition. It's the quiet, unbreakable core that keeps you standing when every external support has crumbled. Seneca captured this perfectly. A gem cannot be polished without friction. Think about that. The very struggles that feel like they're wearing you down. They're the grit refining your resolve. Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison didn't break him. They became the crucible where his will was tempered into something unshakable. He emerged not with bitterness, but with a clarity so sharp it dismantled apartheid. That's the paradox of true dominance. The more life tries to grind you, the smoother and stronger your will becomes. Consider the blacksmith's anvil. Every strike of the hammer should, in theory, weaken the metal, but under precise heat and pressure, the opposite happens. The blows align the steel's structure, making it denser, more resilient. Your will operates the same way. Each rejection, each setback, each moment you choose to get up when every cell screams to stay down, that's the hammer shaping your inner steel. When J.K. Rowling faced poverty and 12 publisher rejections, she didn't just endure, she used the friction to polish her craft until Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. Here's the challenge most miss. Willpower isn't a finite resource you conserve like battery life. It's a muscle that grows stronger with use, the athlete pushing through the last rep when their body gives out. The artist revising their draft for the 30th time, the parent working double shifts to build a better future. These aren't just acts of perseverance, they're deliberate workouts for the soul. So let's make this personal. What test could strengthen your will today? Maybe it's resisting the snooze button to meditate for 5 minutes in the dark. Or finally having that uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding. Even something as simple as drinking water instead of reaching for sugar when stress hits. The scale doesn't matter, the repetition does, because every time you choose discipline over convenience, you're not just solving a problem, you're building a backbone that no storm can snap. History's most formidable figures, from Joan of Arc standing alone before her accusers to Malala Yousafzai returning to school after being shot, shared one trait: they treated their will like a forge. Every hardship was fuel, every setback a chance to burn away weakness. You don't need a prison cell or a battlefield to train this. The raw materials are already in your life, in the temptations you resist, the fears you face, the small choices that whisper, take the easy way out. The question isn't whether you'll face friction, it's whether you'll let it polish you into something unbreakable. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a truth in his private journal that cuts through modern anxiety like a knife. The deed is yours, the outcome is fate's. Think about the weight that lifts the realization that your worth isn't tied to what happens after you've done your best, but to the integrity of the effort itself. Picture a world-class violinist backstage, fingers tracing scales one final time before a performance. They've rehearsed this piece for months, every crescendo, every pause, but once the curtain rises, the audience's reaction, the critics' reviews, even a stray cough in the third row. None of it's in their control. The Stoic performer doesn't obsess over standing ovations. They focus on the one thing they command, pouring their soul into every note. This isn't resignation, it's liberation. Consider how Olympic athletes train. A sprinter can't control who shows up on race day, the weather, or a competitor's explosive start. But they can control their sleep, their diet, their commitment to daily drills. Michael Phelps' coach, Bob Bowman, embedded this Stoic principle in his training: control the controllables. Even when Phelps' goggles filled with water during the 2008 Olympics, He didn't panic, he'd mentally rehearsed swimming blind. The gold medal was fate's to decide, the flawless stroke count was his. Now zoom into your life. That job interview you prepped for, you could nail every answer and still lose to an internal candidate. The book proposal you poured your heart into, an editor might reject it because their list is full. Stoicism doesn't say don't care, it says care deeply but about the right thing. Your preparation, your ethics, your willingness to learn, those are your domain. The rest, that's the universe's business. Here's the mental pivot most miss. Detachment from outcomes isn't passivity. It's the opposite. When you stop tying your self-worth to results, you free yourself to take bolder swings. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter not knowing if it would sell, but believing the story deserved her best. Steve Jobs launched the iPhone unsure if consumers would embrace touchscreens, but convinced the design was right. Their power came from committing fully to the work while holding the results lightly. So grab your journal and answer this. What outcome have I been treating as a report card on my worth? Is it the number on the scale dictating your discipline, the likes on your post measuring your creativity, the promotion deciding if you're good enough? Now imagine uncoupling your effort from that result. Picture yourself working with the same intensity, but breathing easier because the stakes are self-contained. That's the Stoic secret. When you stop needing external validation to validate your effort, you become unstoppable. Not because you'll always succeed, but because failure can't derail you. History's most enduring innovators shared this trait. Thomas Edison didn't celebrate or despair after each failed filament test. He simply noted another way not to make a light bulb and kept iterating. The outcome was data, not destiny. Your struggles, they're no different. The project that flopped taught you more than the easy win. The relationship that ended clarified what you truly need. When you shift your focus from winning to learning, every result, even the painful ones, becomes fuel. Tonight, try this ritual. After you've given your all to something, a workout, a difficult conversation, a creative project, pause. Acknowledge what was yours, the effort, the intention, the courage. Then whisper Marcus words like a mantra. The deed is mine, the outcome is fate's. Feel the weight slide off your shoulders, because mastery isn't about controlling life's responses, it's about owning your part so completely that no outcome can shake your foundation. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, stood under his painted colonnade and declared something revolutionary for his time. Happiness is a good flow of life, and virtue is its source. Not wealth, not status, not even external success, but the daily practice of 4 cardinal virtues: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. These weren't abstract ideals to the Stoics, they were survival tools for navigating a chaotic world. Fast forward to today, and their relevance hasn't dimmed, it's sharpened. Let's pull these ancient pillars off the parchment and plant them firmly in your modern life, starting with a CEO faced with a choice that would test all 4 at once. Picture the boardroom of a mid-sized tech company. The CFO slides a spreadsheet across the table. If we quietly cut corners on data privacy, we'll boost quarterly profits by 20%. The room falls silent. This is where virtue stops being philosophy and becomes action. Courage isn't just battlefield heroics, it's the CEO speaking first. We're not trading ethics for earnings. Even when voices argue, everyone does this, even when their stock might dip. Modern courage wears a suit and risks reputation to protect principles. Then comes temperance, not the puritanical rejection of pleasure, but the disciplined pause before hitting approve on that lucrative but exploitative ad campaign. It's the founder who caps their salary to reinvest in employee wages, recognizing that unchecked hunger destroys what it seeks to consume. Like a chef who knows exactly how much spice enhances a dish without overwhelming it, temperance is the art of enough. Justice ignites when that same CEO audits their supply chain, discovering child labor in a supplier's factory. The easy path: issue a PR statement and quietly switch vendors. The Stoic path: publicly sever ties, fund education for those children, and transform company policy to prevent future harm. Justice in action isn't fairness when convenient, it's fairness as a non-negotiable foundation, even when it costs. Finally, wisdom, the virtue that ties them together. It's not just knowing what's right, but discerning how to apply it. When that CEO consults ethicists, legal teams, and frontline employees before making a decision, they're channeling Zeno's insight that knowledge without action is empty. Wisdom is the compass that prevents courage from becoming recklessness, temperance from becoming rigidity, and justice from becoming self-righteousness. Now turn the lens inward. Which virtue feels most foreign to your daily choices? Maybe it's temperance when your phone buzzes with distractions, or courage when you bite back truth to keep peace. The Stoics didn't expect perfection, just progress. So tonight, pick one. Wisdom might mean finally reading that book gathering dust on your shelf. Justice could be amplifying a colleague's idea in tomorrow's meeting. Small acts, yes, but like drops shaping stone, they carve the kind of character no market crash or algorithm change can erode. Because happiness, as Zeno promised, isn't a destination, it's the current you create by swimming with virtue, one deliberate stroke at a time. Epictetus threw open the doors of his philosophy school, each dawn with a challenge that still echoes today. First think, who do you want to be? Not what you want to achieve, not what you want to possess, but who you choose to become in the crucible of the day ahead. The Stoic morning ritual wasn't about checking boxes or grinding before sunrise. It was a sacred space to align your actions with your deepest values before the world could pull you off course. Picture Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, rising before his subjects to light a single candle and journal, not about conquests or politics, but about the virtues he aimed to embody that day: patience with difficult advisors, courage in uncertainty, fairness when tempted by power. Modern neuroscience confirms what these ancients practiced. A Harvard study found that people who begin their day with just 5 minutes of focused intention setting experience 23% less decision fatigue by afternoon. Take Tim Cook, Apple CEO, who starts at 4:15 a.m., not with emails but with meditation and a brutal honesty session. What's one thing I've been avoiding that needs my courage today? Or Oprah Winfrey's ritual of writing 3 things she's grateful for before her feet touch the floor, a practice shown to boost serotonin levels as effectively as some antidepressants. These aren't productivity hacks, they're psychological armor forged in stillness. The Stoic trifecta for mornings cuts through the noise of modern routines. First, meditation, but not the vague, clear your mind trope. Epictetus-style meditation is a mental battlefield drill. Close your eyes and visualize 3 potential challenges today: a frustrating commute, a critical colleague, a looming deadline. Now rehearse your response. If traffic snarls, I'll listen to that podcast I've saved. If criticism comes, I'll ask what part might hold truth. This is Premeditatio Malorum in action, preparing your mind to meet chaos with poise. Next, intention, not a to-do list but a to-be declaration. Channel Seneca's question to his friend Lucilius. What quality will you test today? Maybe it's curiosity in meetings instead of defensiveness, or generosity when you typically compete. High performers like author Ryan Holiday use this as a filter. If I could only accomplish one thing today, what would make me proud at sunset? This narrows the noise to a laser point. Finally, gratitude, Stoicism's secret weapon against entitlement. Marcus Aurelius began his journals by thanking nature for simple blessings: fresh water, a friend's smile, the ability to reason. Modern research reveals why this works. Gratitude practice reduces cortisol by 28%. Navy SEAL use a brutal version during Hell Week. When exhaustion peaks, they're ordered to whisper one thing they're grateful for, proving even in suffering, appreciation anchors resilience. Your challenge tonight isn't to copy these rituals blindly, but to design your own. Before bed, set 2 alarms, one for waking, one for your 3-minute Stoic launch. First minute, breathe and visualize one obstacle you'll likely face tomorrow. Then script your ideal response. Second minute, declare one virtue you'll test, perhaps patience with your toddler's morning chaos or integrity in a gray area decision. Third minute, name 3 mundane gifts you often overlook: the hot shower, the neighbor who waves, the fact you have choices at all. The magic lies in consistency, not complexity. Like a blacksmith's hammer shaping steel day after day, these small morning strikes forge an unshakable character. Because when you decide who you'll be before the world tells you who to be, something shifts. Traffic jams become thinking time, critics become teachers, and every sunrise, it's not just another day, it's another chance to practice being the person you're becoming. Seneca once wrote a line that cuts through our obsession with quick wins. Life is long if you know how to use it. At first glance, it sounds simple, almost obvious. But unpack it and you'll find a radical challenge to modern hustle culture. We live in a world that celebrates overnight success, viral moments, and quarterly earnings. Yet the Stoics measured time differently, not in days or dollars, but in depth. Think of an oak tree. Its first years are spent underground, roots stretching deeper than its branches will ever reach. Above the surface, nothing impressive, but that unseen growth is what allows it to weather storms that topple shallower plants. The same applies to your skills, relationships, and character. Consider 2 investors. One chases hot stocks, flipping assets for quick gains. The other quietly invests in index funds, reinvesting dividends for decades. The first might boast at parties, the second will retire with generational wealth. That's the power of compound growth, not just with money, but with everything. The writer who publishes daily blogs no one reads for 3 years suddenly becomes an overnight authority. The musician practicing scales while friends chase trends eventually plays with a fluency that can't be faked. Even kindness compounds, small, consistent acts of integrity, returning the extra change, admitting mistakes, showing up when it's inconvenient, build a reputation that opens doors no networking event ever could. Now turn the lens inward. What shortcuts are you taking today that will cost you tomorrow? That extra hour scrolling instead of sleeping, the ethical corner cut to hit a target. The harsh words vented to feel right in the moment. Seneca warned, "We are tight-fisted with property and generous with time, the very thing we ought to value more." It's a paradox. We sacrifice years chasing things that won't matter in decades, while neglecting the slow, steady investments that define legacies. History's most enduring figures understood this. Beethoven composed masterpieces while going deaf, not because he sought fame, but because daily discipline was his compass. Marie Curie's notebooks still glow with radiation a century later, not because she chased accolades, but because her curiosity ran deeper than safety. Their power came from playing a game most weren't patient enough to join. So here's the question to sit with tonight. What's your oak tree? Not the flashy achievement that'll fade by next year, but the slow, deep work that might not bloom until you're gone. The memoir only your grandchildren will read, the business built to outlive you, the kindness that ripples beyond your sight, because the real measure of a life isn't how loud it was, but how long it echoes. And that kind of legacy isn't built in bursts, it's grown one deliberate day at a time. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the raw material. Every setback you faced, every obstacle that's knocked you down, every moment that felt like the universe was conspiring against you. They weren't roadblocks, they were the training ground for the kind of strength that can't be faked or borrowed. This is the Stoic path from failure to true dominance, not over others but over yourself. It starts with perception, that split-second choice to see the stumbling block as a stepping stone. Then comes action, the decision to move forward even when every instinct screams to retreat. And finally, the unshakable will to keep going when the world whispers, quit. Think of a blacksmith shaping a sword. The steel doesn't become unbreakable because it avoided the hammer it's forged by it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled an empire in chaos, understood this better than anyone. His journals, scribbled by candlelight, reveal a man who didn't just endure adversity, he leveraged it. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's the core of Stoic dominance. The obstacles aren't just things to overcome, they're the very tools that shape you into someone who can't be stopped. Now, here's the truth most people miss. Real power isn't about controlling the world around you. It's about mastering the world within you. External dominance fades, titles get stripped, wealth evaporates, applause dies down. But the internal kind, that's yours forever. No one can take the discipline you've built, the resilience you've earned, or the clarity you've fought for. Marcus put it perfectly. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What color is yours? Is it the gray of doubt or the gold of unwavering resolve? Your move now. This isn't just philosophy, it's fuel. Pick one lesson from today and put it to work this week. Maybe it's reframing a setback as strategy, like Edison did with his 10,000 failed experiments. Or practicing the pause before reacting, like a Stoic diplomat in a heated negotiation. Even something as simple as asking, what's mine to control here? When stress hits, the size of the step doesn't matter, the consistency does. Drop a comment below with your choice. Let's see who's ready to turn their stumbles into strength. Because the world doesn't need more people who dominate others, it needs more who have mastered themselves. And that's a victory no failure can